So one of the things I think that's so fascinating about your program is your fascination with the school lunch program. You're fascinated by school lunches. And what is that? Because I don't know, you didn't have any milk when you were growing up?
We learned to be passionate about things, and we have funding agencies that are passionate about school lunch. And with the other thing I think to think about with school lunch, and I can get behind this as someone that's very passionate about the dairy industry, is that we have a federal mandate in the school lunch program to put milk in there. I mean,
Oh, the timeout. So there's a federal law that says there must be milk.
Federal guidelines for school lunches and we have a review article published in Journal of Dairy Science, and there's a lot of regulations around the school lunch program if the school is going to receive federal funding. And I'm not an expert on all of those guidelines, but one of those guidelines is that children have to be served a cup of milk. And milk, not a plant beverage, not water, not juice, has to be milk.
Okay.
And so that represents an opportunity for the dairy industry to get in front of a potential lifelong consumer. Right. This is where you encounter milk. Right. Even if you don't have it at home, you can encounter it here. And it represents, a real opportunity against all these external pressures we have that are anti-animal agriculture to still promote not only the nutrition of milk, but the flavor of milk. And we have had some issues with promoting those things. And so I can get very passionate about that.
Hello, everybody. This is the Dairy Digressions podcast. I am Dr. Matt Lucy, and I will be your host. We're recording from the 2024 American Dairy Science Association annual meeting in West Palm Beach, Florida. This annual gathering advances scientific collaboration and learning and also reinforces our personal and professional ties in the dairy sciences. Hey, you missed this meeting? So sorry, but don't forget, we've got another meeting next year. Abstract submissions open this fall. And today we have Professor and dairy food icon, Dr. MaryAnne Drake, who is the William Neal Reynolds Distinguished, whoever that was. I do not know that person.
Me neither.
Okay, there we go. Distinguished professor in the Department of Food, Bioprocessing, and Nutritional Sciences at North Carolina State University. MaryAnne's research on flavor and flavor chemistry of dairy foods as it relates to consumer perception, which is absolutely true. She's a fellow of the Institute of Food Technologists,
IFT,
and IFT, and an ADSA Fellow. She was the first female president of the American Dairy Science Association. True?
That is true.
That is true. Director of the NCSU Sensory Service Center and director of the Southeast Dairy Foods Research Center. Correct?
That is all.
Are you agreeing to all these things?
I think I already have. So they're crushing me. No, I'm good.
She is a passionate advocate for U.S. dairy. Let's just set the record straight. 382 publications in Scopus. It's in Scopus. Nearly 14,000 citations and an 8 index of 67. Welcome, MaryAnne. Those are impressive numbers.
I didn't know those were the numbers. Thank you. I feel better already.
I feel better already. It's amazing. So we're going to talk about you for a little while, then about your training. Where were you born? Okay, let me guess. North Carolina.
No.
Okay. I have no clue then.
I am Southern born and Southern bred. I was born in Mississippi to Southern parents, but I grew up in the Northwest.
Okay, and now I'm all confused. You were born in Mississippi, but you moved to the Northwest.
My parents moved when I was a young child to the Northwest, Washington State, and I grew up in Eastern Washington.
No way. I did not put you there. How'd you get interested in dairy foods?
Very accidentally. I'm an accidental dairy foods person. I'm an accidental sensory scientist. Little known fact, I've never had a class in sensory analysis, and I teach it and publish in it.
No way.
I have had a class in dairy foods. I have an undergraduate degree in biology and chemistry.
Nice.
And went to graduate school at Washington State. And while I was there, I started, my master's thesis was kind of related to cheese. And so I started working at the creamery there. And I worked there while I was going to graduate school and kind of found this was a really cool area. I still was working on microbiology. I started off life as a food microbiologist, started my first job as a food microbiologist, but I'd worked with cheese and started off at Mississippi State, which was part of the Dairy Center at that time. And it kind of all happened from there.
Your first job was at Mississippi State.
Yes.
As a microbiologist.
As a food microbiologist, working in dairy, but as a microbiologist.
Do they have a dairy plant there at that time?
Charlie White was the department
Oh,
head.
no way.
I've stood on the shoulders of giants my entire
no
career.
way. And then when did you move to North Carolina State?
Todd Kleinhammer moved me to North Carolina State in 2001.
How many years you spent at Mississippi State?
4.
Four.
Started there in 1997.
Did they give you tenure when you moved, or did you have to earn tenure? Where would you get your tenure?
Got my tenure at NC State. I was not tenured when I left Mississippi.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you went to Raleigh in 2001. Same old Raleigh, isn't it, since 2001?
No.
A little different, slightly
Not even
different.
close, yeah.
Where is the food science department? It's down in the Brickyard somewhere, or where?
You are familiar with NC State.
I know NC State.
The beautiful thing about the food science department at NC State is, number one, we're in a big city, which makes it a perfect, and we're in a metroplex now, which makes it a perfect place for what I do, which is consumer insights. But the other really awesome thing is it's on the corner of campus, so it's easy access for consumers. We're on the far corner next to Ag E, if you know where the Ag Engineering building is. And it's right on the edge of Western Boulevard.
Fantastic.
So it's a hike from the Brickyard.
Are you department chair there? No?
I hope my department chair hears that. Keep waiting for,
Not your thing,
No.
huh?
No, I'm not the department
Were you
chair.
ever department chair? Ever?
No.
How'd you stay out of that gig? Because you seem like natural, you must I bet you get letters all the time. MaryAnne, would you like to apply for our
I don't
department
know who
head
you've been
position?
talking to, Matt. I can honestly say I've never gotten such a request.
You never got a
Not
letter?
ever.
Really?
Not ever.
You're so famous. Okay, well, anyways, all right. So your current position, you're a full professor, obviously. What's your split? Research, teaching. What's your split?
80-20.
20 on the teaching.
Yes.
Nice. What do you teach?
One class.
Yay. What is it?
Teach a graduate level class in sensory analysis and flavor chemistry.
Yeah. So this is really interesting about MaryAnne. I was reading a lot of her publications, and you're super interested in sensory, and you're also super interested in sort of consumer perspectives on dairy. I mean, that really drives your passion.
Yes.
Tell us about your lab. So you must have some grad students. You talked about your grad students. How many?
Some graduate students. I think I have 15 right now that are formal graduate students. And then in my program, people intern for 6 months.
You can't have 15 graduate students.
I have 15 graduate students.
How do you run a lab with 15 graduate students? You can't even go to get a pizza. You fit in 5 tables.
Okay, so first of all, did you see me? I've been on email the full time. When I was waiting to come in here, I pulled my computer out and was answering emails.
Yeah.
You saw the photos of my lab, and if you were listening to my talk, at the end, I had these slides of a chaotic beehive. I had actually asked my student if you could find a flying 3-ring circus, that would actually be a greater picture of what's going. It's a 3-ring circus on any given day. I tell the kids, that's what I call my graduate students, I feel like I'm walking into a firing squad every day filled with bullets, and then what's left of me crawls home every night. Yeah.
Do you, so you have 15
And then I have
graduate
another
students?
5, maybe 3 or 4 interns, and I'm constantly bringing interns on. So it's usually between 15 and 20 graduate students at any one point in time.
And what is the split between PhDs and masters?
Heavy masters. So I think I have 5 PhDs.
And they want to get a master's in food science.
Yes.
Why? So they can get a better job in food science, or why do they want to get a master's in food science?
I think sometimes, so right now the industry really wants master's degrees. The food industry wants master's degrees. Maybe we'll see a shift towards PhDs, but right now it's master's degrees. And so most of the time when kids come into graduate school, it's because they believe that that's what they're going to need to get a job. Sometimes they want to do that because they want to be sensory scientists, and in reality, a bachelor's degree in food science, you might have taken one class in sensory, you know nothing about how to do it or implement it or go do it at a company. So you'll have to get a master's degree or get a low-level entry position and work your way into it. Both are doable, but a lot of times kids think a master's degree is going to be faster.
So are these kids from all over the world? Are they mainly from North Carolina? Where are these kids coming from?
In my lab right now, I usually have a good diverse mixture. I have a few from outside of the US, but more than 80% are US students. Maybe 2 to 4 are North Carolina. I get a lot. I have several universities on the West Coast that I recruit from regularly, and then I get students in from other places. So I have several from Cal Poly, several from University BYU Idaho, a couple from University of Illinois right now.
So do you have a flat lab structure or do you have sort of a structure to it?
There is a hierarchy in my lab.
Okay. And are there technicians inserted in there? One technician.
One lonely technician who has been out on a terrible emergency medical leave for the last 3 months, which is just terrible because I've worked with her for 20 years.
Oh my.
And then, add that to, the other, like full-time adult is now out and they go, oh my Lord, what do we do? So the good news is it's been a great opportunity for some of my senior students to step up into additional roles. And of course,
you're talking about senior, like PhD students, to step up into some, and do more then. Do more, take on some more leader. In my lab, because we have a hierarchy, now there was even more opportunity for, 2 of these students to move into the role that this technical staff member had done and work more closely with me and then see a little bit more behind the curtain of what's really going on with the everyday chaos that goes on in the lab. Yes. So some of your work is with industry, I think, because that 15, the budget's crazy, right? Thank you for recognizing that. Yes, we probably shouldn't mention the numbers that it takes to pay and feed all of those hungry mouths. Yeah. The budget's got to be gigantic. Yes, it is. So for example, Dannon's got a new yogurt and they want to know, or maybe they've got a couple different possible I don't know if chemical combinations is the right word, but flavor profiles, and they want it tested. Yes. What do consumers think about those things and how do those line up against their market competitors? Yes. Oh my God, this is so complicated. You are a competitive person, so this is perfect for you, right? I can tell you're very competitive. You just sound a little competitive. Are you a competitive person? Ever been in a sport ever in your entire life, an organized sport? No. No? I used to ride horses competitively. In Washington? Yes, show horses. Nice. Do you have a horse now? No. Okay. Had to give that up. Doing this takes about everything I've got. There's only so many hours in a day, right? What's your favorite day at work? You tell me what's your favorite day at work. Like when you go in, this is going to be a great day. I'm looking at my calendar. I've got a day I'm really going to enjoy. Oh man, for me to say that would probably offend a lot of people. If I were to say hypothetically, my perfect day doesn't have like 5 phone calls with people with problems that I'm trying to solve. Right. And 10 students standing in line with an emergency that's urgent. Yeah. The perfect day for me is a feeling of something really got accomplished. Like, some reports went out the door, or a paper got published, or a paper got accepted, or a grant got funded, or we're booked solid for the next 2 months. A day where something successful has been done. Because you and I both know that there are a lot of days where there's a lot of failures or nothing gets done, and we just have to hang on for these good days like what I just mentioned, right? Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And it's hard. I don't run I could never run 15 people. It would never work for me. When you have so many people working for you, those days, like Christmas Day is a great day to go to work. Nobody's around, right? You can go to work. It's like, I'm going to work. I love it. There's no faculty here. There's no students here. There's no one here. And I can go to work and sit in my office and do science. Like I always love to work between Christmas and New Year's because a lot of the students go home. It's really quiet, and it's just nice, because I like to do, we all love science, and once in a while it's just nice just to do science. To be able to do some thinking, to have some time to think. I like the management part, managing people and managing contracts and all of those things. I enjoy that, but it's a fine line between being overwhelmed by that and not being able to actually do leadership and ideation where, where are we going? What are the next big problems? How do I, and so it's really hard not to get mired down in the management day to day. You're a leader in food, you are in dairy foods, and everybody looks up to you. And like in the production side, and so we in dairy science we have both food and we have production. And if you ask me, what's a key issue with production right now, I could tell you what the industry is really concerned about. What is the industry really concerned about in terms of dairy foods? Do they have stuff that everybody's kind of getting worked up about, or is it plant-based competition, or you guys don't really think like that, or do you? I think we do. I would say I just came from the hot topic session on avian, the H5N1, or with that everyone is concerned about that. And in the foods arena, we are concerned about that. Yes. Because that's going to potentially impact consumer trust. We haven't even talked about the potential for, what about raw milk cheese? We've talked a lot about raw milk and pasteurization. Okay, but what about raw milk cheese? So those things are all
on everyone's, on several people's radar. Sustainability, carbon emissions, everybody's worried about that.
Planet,
And
just like,
yes,
because dairy plants.
so
Why are they worried? Are they not sustainable? Are they?
well, I mean, if you ask the average consumer, and if you look around you at all the media, animal agriculture is the big bad, and dairy cows are the face of the big bad. I don't ever see a beef cow on the face of the big bad and what's killing the planet. You see a picture of milk and cows.
Yeah.
When in fact in the United States, US agriculture is less than 10%. If we believe the EPA, which is a whole nother, that's a whole nother argument, but in the US, it's 10%. The average consumer thinks it's 25% in the US, and that's because of misinformation and everything. There is in my opinion, there is a global anti-animal agriculture push, and how legitimate that is in the United States. I can't speak for outside of the United States, but in the United States, I'm not sure that that's a legitimate message given management of carbon emissions. The primary source of carbon emissions in the United States is cars and all the electricity. We don't want to hear that.
Yeah, we don't hear that. No, it's true. We had Frank Mittlerner on earlier episode, and we talked a lot about that. And what was really interesting is we explored the thesis was, the fossil fuel industry kind of likes to amp up the charges against the animal industry because it diverts some of the attention, and I said, Frank, that can't be possible. And he's like, well, this is how it goes. So one of the things I think that's so fascinating about your program is your fascination with the school lunch program. You're fascinated by school lunches. And what is that? Because I don't know. You didn't have any milk when you were growing up?
We learned to be passionate about things, and we have funding agencies that are passionate about school lunch. And with the other thing I think to think about with school lunch, and I can get behind this as someone that's very passionate about the dairy industry, is that we have a federal mandate in the school lunch program to put milk in there. I mean,
the timeout. So there's a federal law that says there must be milk.
Federal guidelines for school lunches and we have a review article published in Journal of Dairy Science, and there's a lot of regulations around the school lunch program if the school is going to receive federal funding. And I'm not an expert on all of those guidelines, but one of those guidelines is that children have to be served a cup of milk. And milk, not a plant beverage, not water, not juice, has to be milk.
Okay.
And so that represents an opportunity for the dairy industry to get in front of a potential lifelong consumer.
Right.
This is where you encounter milk.
Right.
Even if you don't have it at home, you can encounter it here. And it represents, a real opportunity against all these external pressures we have that are anti-animal agriculture to still promote not only the nutrition of milk, but the flavor of milk. And we have had some issues with promoting those things. And so I can get very passionate about that.
I also want to touch on the new ADSA loyalty rewards program, which you must just love. You publish constantly in the Journal of Dairy Science. Well, the Journal of Dairy Science, Jada's Communication is an awards program where the more you publish, you earn credit. And the more you review, you earn credits. Do you ever pay for a paper? You publish all the time in there. So you must have so many credits. You're like the gold platinum member of the ADSA. How many credits do you have right now anyways?
Well, I wouldn't know the answer to that. And Matt, I'm busy thinking you definitely have a silver tongue. I mean, you probably need some sort of ribbon for that. When in the old program, where you did get a discount, but I did get discounts every year. I remembered that. And so it's nice to have this coming online, and, open access page charges are not cheap. So it's
pretty nice, isn't it?
Yes.
Good old Paul Conenough. Thank you, Paul, for pushing that one over the thing. So okay, so this is what I have, this vision. Okay, I'm gonna start. Okay, now we're not gonna be able to go through all these papers, because if I did that, it would take 4 hours. All right, we don't have 4 hours. I have this vision. Okay, this paper you published in 2021, Child Preferences and Perceptions of Fluid Milk. Okay, in schools or something, in school meal programs,
School lunch,
yeah. You got a bunch of 8 to 13-year-olds together in a room.
Well,
you started asking them, do you like this or that? Wasn't that like chaos?
So
a bunch of 8-year-olds are like, they're throwing the cartons at each other. Are they really sitting nicely?
You have to be very careful when you're doing those types of work. So 2 different types of sensory tests. We did focus groups, and that actually is where you bring in
8-year-olds
with a small group of kids, And doing focus groups with adults is a fine art, and doing them with children is a completely different set of things. I'm reasonably competent, I think, at doing a focus group with adults. With kids, it actually, I've done it before, and I've actually had, I think, the situation you just described. I had it was many years ago, we were working on flavored milk with kids. And we had a group of boys, and we'd had snacks out for them, and I think literally the table was vibrating as they were grabbing snacks and chattering. But these groups, and I remember Lauren Sipple, who was the first author on this paper, she really enjoyed running the focus groups, and she had
with children, like they're little kids.
Yep, and their parents bring them in, and of course we have a video camera monitor so the parents can see what's going on. We have to be very careful about that. They're sitting out in the lobby. We're in a conference room with them, and she had an activity for them. So they come in and keep them busy. They have a sorting activity, and then they got to look at all these different milk bottles, and they got to taste some milk. And so we do those types of activities, and you collect their thoughts. And then we do other types of tests with kids where it's an actual taste test. And in a taste test, the child is by themselves because we want them focused on the milk, not on everybody and everything. And that sometimes that's a very hard challenge, just to be, focused for a few minutes to taste some milk and tell us how much they like it or don't like it.
And it was fascinating. Like, okay, so you got these kids together. Mm-hmm. And you're interested in what attracts a kid. I don't know what they like in the school, and they like an HDPE bottle. Whatever, that's a certain side of plastic. That's a little plastic bottle.
It's a little plastic bottle with a lid,
with a blue colored packaging and a cow graphic. That's what a kid wants.
That's what they said in that study. Yes.
And what do they get? They get those cartons of milk. Why are we giving them the cartons of milk? Where did those? I had cartons when I was little.
Did you like them?
I drank my milk because that was what I was supposed to do. Okay, I was a rule follower. All right, but
I think that's a hallmark of boomers and Gen X, isn't it? Yeah,
rule followers. But the carton milks aren't very good, huh?
No, they're not. Kids don't like them. There's several things about milk cartons. Kids don't prefer them. They also had that paperboard carton with that coating on the inside and outside of it is very permeable. So that means all the flavors and the surrounding storage go right into that little carton. And so it's also not a very good container for preserving the freshness and flavor of the milk. So the milk coming in it doesn't taste as good as the milk in an HDPE carton that's been shielded from light. We serve milk in paperboard cartons because that's the least expensive way to do that. And the school lunch program is governed by costs and regulations, of which we would be diving into the rabbit hole of politics to talk about the costs and why don't we change to HDPE jugs, because that's what kids like. That also preserves the flavor so it tastes better, and our potential child consumers would like the flavor of their school lunch milk because it costs too much.
But then you did a second paper. Now I heard that the reason kids don't drink milk is because we've been giving them this 1% stuff in school, and if we'd only kept with the whole milk. Is that true? Or you said, this is an interesting question because you tell me. Okay. Why? Is that not true or true?
The answer is it depends. So
you can't say that every time.
Well, let me explain it to you. In that paper, so the hypothesis was, the flavor of the milk fat, kids and adults like the flavor of that milk fat more.
Right.
Well, if you're actually focused on that, where we have isolated all the parameters and there's nothing else influencing the flavor of that milk. In other words, we process it and we put it into glass, which is an inert package, and we protect it from light. So that milk has the only difference now is the standardized milk fat content. When you control all of those parameters, the concentration of fat required for people to detect a difference, whether it's an adult or a child, if they cannot see the product and the product has been packaged and processed in glass, the concentration of fat required for people to tell a difference is more than 4%. Kid you not.
It's got to be 4%.
Yes. Now, if it's
yummy, I like that.
Now, if you have visual cues, it's closer to 1% or less. I'd have to check the details.
So if they can see it, that it's kind of blue colored or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah.
The practical question was, doesn't milk in the school lunch program taste better if it has more fat in it? The answer to that question is yes. Where's the disconnect? The disconnect comes back to that paperboard carton.
Oh.
That paperboard carton, I told you it was a very permeable container. So stuff from the surrounding environment is going into the milk. The paperboard itself is permeating into the milk. Those are imparting stale cardboard flavors. A trained panel can pick up those cardboard carton flavors within 4 hours of processing milk into those cardboard carton containers. Okay. Why does fat make an impact? The presence of the fat modulates the sensory detection of those off flavors.
Oh, that is so interesting.
It is very interesting. So yes, does whole milk or 2% milk in a cardboard carton taste better than skim milk? Absolutely, because the presence of the fat masks the cardboard carton and surrounding environment off flavors that have migrated into that carton. That is the answer to that story. And it's very convoluted. And of course, you have to show, first of all, that if you isolate all these parameters, it's actually really not the fat, it's what the fat does.
Now you want me to be a sensory biologist, but I'm too old and I can't handle 15 other grad students in the same lab. I would just be falling apart. Okay.
Well, I feel like that some days too.
Yeah. There's like, give me an adult in the room, darn it all. One of the papers you published in 1920, and this is the last one I'll talk about, but you published it in 2022, Journal of Dairy Science, Parents' Implicit Perceptions of Dairy Milk and Plant-Based Alternatives. And you did another, it was, you were talking to parents, I assume, about what they thought about milk. And in your conclusions, this really bothered me that they didn't have any problem with milk. Most of them said, okay, 73.4% said dairy milk is fine. And, they weren't all in love with the plant-based stuff, but that's fine. 85% of parents in our study could recall drinking milk at home as a child. We were all told to drink milk when we were children.
We dutifully did it.
We did it. And 58% remembered encouragement from their parents to drink milk. So the majority drank milk and their parents told them, you got to drink your milk. However, only 38% of these modern day parents encourage their own children to drink milk.
That is a yellow flag for us, if not a red flag.
And the majority, 55%, were neutral towards their children's milk consumption. What happened? So the parents basically, well, I drank milk, it was fine, but my kid doesn't drink milk, I don't really care.
What I think, and I don't think we have the data to back this up, but what I think that's about is that's all the marketing. You look at all the marketing for all the other plant-based beverages and orange juice. Well, they have the same, you hear they have the same amount of protein. I see that advertising on the cartons. I hear that on the commercials. They have added calcium. Well, my kid would rather drink this, or I feel better about the planet when we drink this. I think these are the messages that consumers hear, and those have underlying slow but long-term effects. And I don't personally think that we as an industry are doing enough counter messaging to get to counter that. I mean, milk tastes great and it does a body good. I mean, we have all those messages, but we don't have anything. We don't have as much. I do see some of it now, but we don't have as much to counter all these things. Why not oat milk if it has the same calcium and it has the same protein? Consumers actually don't know the difference between complete proteins. They'll tell you they want a complete protein. We have publications that show that. They have no idea what a complete protein is. So when you say oat protein and plant protein, that means awesome things to consumers. Animal protein or whey protein or milk protein doesn't have the same messaging or relevance with consumers right now. When we look at protein beverages, protein bars, plant protein is always preferred conceptually right now. There was a huge, and we do these types of surveys every year, and COVID was where we saw the flip-flop, where the conceptual preference for dairy protein
was the tipping point.
I think it just accelerated. I think you had seen a slow decline and a slow decline in dairy protein preferences, and an increase in the availability of plant proteins. We just think about the explosion of opportunities in the different plant-based alternatives in the last 10 years. And then COVID just accelerated that. I
went to a session on the dairy matrix today, and I enjoyed just sort of relearning more about milk as from the production side. Even the production side people don't think about it as much. They think about the production, but they don't think about the human nutrition side. It was just, it was really good for me to do that. Hey, with a close, we got only a couple more minutes left here, MaryAnne, and I just wanted to mention that we started this ADSA meeting with Dairy Food Symposium, championing women in science and remembering the legacy of Susan Duncan. And Susan was a very special person. She was a food scientist at Virginia Tech, well loved, and she died unexpectedly recently. And so it was really nice. There was a symposium on women in science. You're a woman in science. You described yourself as, I can't remember what word you used, but it was a funny word.
An old bat.
An old bat. That's what you said. I can't remember what you said.
You're very, very politically correct, Matt. You didn't want to say that.
You didn't want to say that.
Well done.
And so there's been a lot of changes and things have moved forward. Is there still work to do in terms of making the scientific career something a woman wants to do or is interested in doing? Is there still, have we moved the needle at all? I mean, you started out obviously with a passion to be a professor.
Yes, absolutely.
And times have changed. Everything has changed. And I'm sure you have a million stories. And what we find now is a lot of both men and women don't want to go down the professor role.
I agree. See that over and over again now.
And women are unique and they have different, they're not men and they're different. Is there still work to do in terms of why? Maybe I'll just ask you this question. Why doesn't anybody want to be a professor anymore? Is it true that nobody wants to be a professor anymore?
Most of my graduate students don't want to be a professor, and they say because they don't want to work as hard as I work. That is what I've heard them say. And my response is always, if you really love what you do, if it's what you're here to do, that's how I feel about my job, then all the work isn't as onerous as you would think it is. It is onerous, but it is doable because this is what I'm supposed to do. I've always felt that way. So you have to find your passion. You hear people telling you that all the time. If you love what you do, or you believe that it's your purpose, then it's not so onerous. And I don't know that everyone wants to feel that way about what they do. I can't speak for other people. I've always felt that I've always been an all-in kind of person. So all in, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is what I was put here to do. I'm good with all of this. Most people aren't that intense. That's been my experience. I apologize if anyone is. Good for you. Find your passion. Everyone needs to find their passion and find their own pathway. When I started out, there were not nearly as many women, and now there are lots of them. And so I think we've made progress. Again, everybody has their own perspective. You heard that in that presentation yesterday. I mean, I think back and maybe I was very lucky. I have never, can't say never, but professionally in the dairy foods arena, I have never had any experience other than an uplifting experience from men. Alan Fogading was my mentor for 20 years. Todd Kleinhammer grabbed me, figuratively, when I was a graduate student and recruited me into the Southeast, and then brought me, literally almost forced me to come to NC State from Mississippi State. Peter Studney, when I was the president of ADSA, was nothing but helpful. And for people that knew Peter would know he was not necessarily a soft, fuzzy kind of guy, but he was a very kind man, and he was very good to me and helped me and gave me advice on what to do when I didn't know anything about being the president of the association. I've worked with Dave Barbano for more than 20 years. I've found nothing but positive experiences from the professional, and I've grown up working around men. So it's something I'm very familiar with and very comfortable with. Clearly in that symposium yesterday, other people have not had similar experiences. And that's a sad thing for women. It's a sad thing for men too. Men and women have very different strengths. That's what my personal belief. And, when we all work together, things happen. As far as, is there work still to do? I'm probably not the best person to ask that question. I think we've made great inroads. And I think the beautiful thing is that women have the freedom to choose. There are choices, and you do have to live with there are consequences to all choices. Yeah. The beautiful thing is that you can choose. You can choose to be all a career. You can choose to have career and family. You can choose family, and all of those things are more accepted today than they were when I started out 25 years ago. Are we at full equality? I don't know that I would say that, but it's, and has it gotten better in 25 years? Yes, it's gotten more. All of those choices are more acceptable now than they were 25 years ago.
Yeah, I teach mainly women because I'm in an animal science department, and I teach graduate school, and I teach graduate things, and occasionally I teach endocrinology, and occasionally we get into women's health issues and stuff like that, and how things have changed. And I was born in 1960, so I saw women's liberation movement, and I always like to remind the students that don't forget there was a lot of women that worked really hard to move the needle on this and sacrificed. Like yourself, you worked hard and sacrificed to move the needle on this and earn respect, and to demonstrate that a woman could be an effective faculty member, and do it her own way. Because I know you didn't just say, I'm going to do it like the guys, that you did it your own way. Okay. And you just have to respect that, and you have to just keep, it's a process. It's a process that, when my mother was little, she wanted to go to college and her parents said, you're not going to college, you're a woman, and we've moved the needle on that.
We have choices now, and we have more choices. And I guess what I always try to remind myself is everyone has a different experience. Men and women, everybody has, even within a group of men, everyone's had a different experience. Group of women, everyone's had a different experience. Everyone needs to do what works for them. And sometimes that's an academic job. Sometimes that's not. Sometimes that's something else. And more importantly, I think everybody needs to find what their passion is, because it's a lot easier to work hard and to deal with the hard days with all the failures and inherent failures in research if it's what you really love. If it's not what you really love, then maybe you need to find what you really love or work at finding what you really love.
Fantastic advice. We have mostly young people here, MaryAnne, and those are just wonderful words. And we're going to wrap because I told you we would be done by 6:10. And I wanted to ask one question and then I'm going to wrap it up.
Okay.
If you were not a scientist, what would you be doing? Are there any other passions out there for you? You liked your horses.
Well, my mind would first go back to, gosh, I've been consumed by what I do for so long. I'd probably go back to horses and or have a farm with some chickens. I've always been fascinated with chickens, have a chicken coop, have some animals, including some cows, some horses, maybe a peacock.
Yeah.
Who was it before me that said she really wanted a platypus? That seems intriguing, but that sounds very high maintenance. I think a peacock would probably be as far as I would go.
Yeah, right.
Probably something like that, which sounds completely not like me, but it'd be a little bit slower paced. That's a very, very fast pace in the world that I operate in right now. And that's tiring sometimes as you get older.
That was fantastic. This interview's been fantastic, MaryAnne. I knew it would be good. And I just want to say thank you for spending the time. I know you're super busy and you got lots going on. And so thank you, MaryAnne.
No, thank you for the opportunity. This was awesome. It's fun to do.
All right, everybody, that brings us to the end of this episode of Dairy Digressions. Don't forget, if you enjoyed Dairy Digressions, please like and subscribe. And if you have feedback or suggestions for speakers, please tell us at adsa@adsa.org. It's been Matt Lucy, your host. Until next time, enjoy your science. Thank you very much, everybody.
Awesome.